What is going on, y'all? Welcome back to 8 Cubes. I have a very special guest. This is Pro Tour champion, Magic the Gathering legend, Gerry Thompson, who I am lucky enough to call one of my friends. And this is going to be an episode where we discuss the intersections between other card games and Marvel Snap. I'd like to give Gerry the opportunity to introduce himself, but first I will say he's been playing Marvel Snap since the beta, and he's actually been playing it longer than I have because he's the reason that I ended up with a beta key all those years ago. Gerry, welcome to the show. Let them know who you are, why they should, parentheses, or shouldn't, be listening to you.
A lot of reasons not to listen to me. I played for like a day longer than you, man. It wasn't even.
It was like a
long.
week.
Maybe it took a while for you to
get it. That might be
okay. Anyway, I am a person who has been playing card games for a very, very long time. I played in my first Pro Tour for Magic the Gathering in 2002, I believe, a million years ago, roughly, and was consistently playing at the highest level from then until about 2019, and took a little break in between there to go work for Wizards of the Coast and work on Magic the Gathering. So I have a little bit of the game designer experience as well. But that led to me making a career out of, making content, Magic the Gathering content specifically, and, doing writing and podcasting and doing occasional commentary. I'm doing commentary this week for a Magic Online thing. Stuff's dope.
So, in terms of Marvel Snap and the reasons people should be listening to you with regards to this game, what's your level of investment? Like, barring the fact that you're like someone who is obviously very good at card games, it does still require, there's this thing that happens where people think that like skill is independent of like metagame understanding and time spent playing. And I'm kind of wondering if you could speak to that, where like you're someone who is obviously quote unquote very naturally skilled, but without like an immense amount of time spent playing and sort of marinating in the metagame. Does your natural skill allow you to sort of shortcut that kind of stuff and gain that understanding? Or is it still something you think would need to come with time?
You asked me what my investment was, and the first thought that popped into my head was, I don't know, $1,000. Like, but
it's gotta be more than that.
But yeah, that's how I ballpark it with all the gacha games I play. And yes, this is a gacha game. I also kind of push back on the notion that I am naturally skilled, because when I first started playing card games, I definitely did not inherently understand things like card advantage or whatever. I had to be taught those things. What I am is a ravenous learner and seeker of information. And, fast forward to when I did finally get into the Marvel Snap beta and I am playing this new game, I am enamored with it. There's a lot going on where I'm just like incredibly bored, stuck in my house, living in a town I don't know anyone. I did have nothing better to do, but even if I did have things to do, I think I still would have immediately been hooked by this game. And I played nonstop for maybe months, like I hit infinite the day after I got the beta key. And a lot of that was just, I'm going to play a bunch of games. I'm going to try a bunch of stuff. I'm going to throw things at the wall, see what sticks, experiment, and try and learn on my own. Because at the time, closed beta, there wasn't like content on this game or anything. I had to actually figure it out myself. And it was through doing this work in other games that allowed me to know how to learn and know what things to be looking for. So like I have things to fall back on when I am transitioning into something similar, right? But I wouldn't say that I was just born knowing that Ancestral Recall is a strong card or whatever.
Well, that's why I put it in quotes, right? Because I think we both agree that natural skill isn't so much a thing, but knowing these heuristics is, right? Like, quote unquote, naturally skilled here was just meant to refer to like, you're someone who's already at a high level of understanding of games in the same genre. How much do you think that transfers over? Do you think like it obviously does in terms of the ability to continue to be good or to understand what matters, but one-to-one, Marvel Snap is actually a game with a lot of different emphasis points to Magic the Gathering, and I think card advantage is a great place to start, where this is a game that I remember coming from Magic myself. I saw Sentinel, and I was like, that must be the best card in the game.
Correct.
It's a card that
Unbelievably
draws you
busted.
cards. That's unbelievable. There's no other thing. And then, like, the more you play Marvel Snap, the stronger individual cards get, the better the cards in your deck, the less it matters that you have a Sentinel in your hand. And that's in large part because of the time limit. There's no such thing as aggro or whatever, really, because everyone has the same amount of time. There's no aggro control dichotomy in a game like this. It's just different variations of sort of how do I get the most points and what is my mechanism towards disrupting my opponent.
Yeah, so when approaching a new game, like every game has its own engine, right? It is all built upon these things, and there are certain resources that are just inevitably going to be more scarce than others. And I think that the delta between those things is part of what makes a lot of these game engines very interesting, right? So this game is, I mean, there are ways to break these rules, of course, but like go 6 turns, you get +1 energy a turn. These are things that are, fairly limited, right? So like if you have ways to cheat on energy, it's like, okay, I could see how maybe that would be a powerful thing, especially if it is coming at a good rate, right? Like if there's like a 5 mana or 5 energy, 1 power card that gives you +1 energy next turn, well, that's not going to be worth it, even though it does fundamentally break a rule of the game. So being able to look at these things and evaluate, well, how important is actually getting an extra energy, like a Hope Summers activation versus like an electrostatic ability, that kind of thing. I think having some fundamental understanding there, again, coming from other games, having similar experience, even if it's not 1-to-1, helps you at least make guesstimates towards how strong those are going to be. And I think that, I don't know, like you do the videos where you have people from other games come on, rate Marvel Snap cards, what they think or whatever. And it's like, they don't get them all right, obviously, because there's a lot of context that you're missing. But you do see a lot of times where people are like, well, this aspect of this card is very strong, and that does tend to be on the nose a lot of the time, even if like the card is unplayable, right? Like it is entirely possible that, I don't know, stuff like Havoc, I think is a good example where its output is strong. It has a very serious downside, and there's a time and a place for it.
So, with an eye towards evaluating cards, let's talk about Hydra Stomper, which is going to come out in only a few days. It's a 3/2 with an ongoing ability that gives it +1 power for every time one of your cards has moved. Couple cards that stick out to me. Sam Wilson gives this +4. It's a 3/6 if you play your Sam Wilson on 2 because his shield goes everywhere. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Heimdall can give this guy, I think, up to like +7, depending on how you set things up. But like even sort of the baseline move deck with Heimdall, that old deck with the Eliath Cosmo kind of thing on the final few turns of the game, that is a deck that like maybe you put Sam Wilson in there, maybe you don't. This guy could be getting close to double digits. How strong do you think this card is? And what is it that you've like, to me, when I look at this card, I see a move card that is very different to previous move cards, all of which were focused around taking these daggers and human torches and vultures and making them more reliable, whereas this is saying, I'm going to be your secondary and or backup plan, but I'm always going to be consistently providing points as long as you're doing the movement for these other cards.
Yeah, it's interesting because move for the most part is A plus B, right? Like you combine Iron Fist plus Human Torch. You try and do that repeatedly. Maybe you use Beast to pick up a location that has both of those so you can do it again, whatever. And I've certainly played games where up until like turn 4, turn 5, you simply do not draw one part of your deck. You do not draw the enablers, or you don't draw the payoffs. And that is very frustrating, but it is the cost of doing business. And Hydra Stomper is a new kind of card for that sort of archetype in that it's a thing that has, like vulture-ish stats on turn 6 with nothing required of it. Like you can just do all the moving stuff and then also play this 10 power thing, which is pretty cool. Certainly adds a new layer and a new dimension to the deck. But then, yeah, you're also talking about the 2-card packages. Like what if you just have Sam Wilson, maybe you even play a Heimdall at the top end, or maybe you have something like Rocket and Groot or whatever that just like adds a little bit of bonus to this thing. I think this Marvel Snap is a game, especially with 12 card decks, where finding ways to incorporate these tiny packages that have a very high output is among some of the strongest things that you can do. And like you figured this out first week with Ajax, I think, where everyone was like, well, in order to make Ajax good, I have to play all these bad cards that afflict things. And you were just like, well, what if I just play Hazmat and I just neg 10 everything? What does it matter if I play 4 cards that afflict things with -1? Because the game ultimately comes down to whether or not I draw Hazmat. So Hydra Stomper could very much end up being the same thing. It might not even be like an Iron Fist card. It might just be like Madam Web, Sam Heimdall.
I do think it's very funny that you bring up the Ajax thing, because that's something where I was right at the time. But then, as they made those other cards better, they gave Man-Thing 2 extra power, they made Anti-Venom. As they, like, made that deck better, it actually started looking a lot more like the let's just jam every Afflict card in the same deck.
That's because all the other cards were now resembling Ajax.
They were all better, yeah. Like, they were all, like, these cards all got better, and so it became a lot more understandable to just jam them all in the same deck, yeah.
It's like if Iron Fist had 5 power and Aranya had 5 power, it's like, yeah, okay, I guess I'd play them alongside Hydra Stomper, but that's just because they're overstated.
Yes. Man-Thing, for the record, wild card. Like, just both Man-Thing and AV are just like, wow, those are really strong cards now. And that did matter. As far as Hydra Stomper comes down, I kind of wonder about this guy, because I think he's going to be like a card that requires so much investment that people aren't going to feel like he's worth it. But at the same time, because he allows you to direct your investment into other cards, he's rewarding you for investing elsewhere. He's rewarding you for moving that Vulture, for moving that Human Torch, for playing that Madam Web, for doing all of that stuff. And he's rewarding you for doing that in a way that I think is actually kind of something this deck might benefit from, or the move Archetype might benefit from. What he might run into, though, is that inasmuch as he is kind of like a dumb guy move card, which I think for the first time he actually is. There's no A+B here. He's an ongoing. He's like the Goliath of move, right? But he still requires you to play with all the smart guy move cards, and frankly, those are really hard cards to play, just in terms of sequencing, and they ask you to make a lot of reads, which is another really hard thing to do. I wonder if this is a card that might just, like, still be skill capped out of being a legitimate threat.
It's possible, but I don't know. In terms of, like, is this card going to sell? Is it appealing? I don't think that matters, because fun will eclipse that almost every time. And it's like, do you find this stuff fun? I think it is pretty clear that even though the move stuff is very difficult, people still enjoy it.
Speaking of fun versus actual good, Strange Supreme is definitely a good card, but is somehow also overrated, is sort of where I'm coming down on this guy. I like playing Strange Supreme Thanos more than I like playing ongoing Thanos, but the Strange Supreme Thanos definitely has a poor matchup in the heads up against the ongoing Thanos deck. And while it is more well-rounded against counters, it's not going to be as weak to Enchantress, it's not going to be as weak to Killmonger. That is a large part of why I like it. It does matter that, like, you just kind of end up losing the heads up to the other version of the deck that plays Thanos. Strange Supreme is a pretty damn good card, but there's this thing that happens in Marvel Snap, and I have noticed it a lot, where I feel like if Morbius came out today, everyone would be calling it broken because the number on the card is so high, and there's not enough attention being paid to what it took to get that number on the card, and what the actual investment was to get that payoff. And I think Strange Supreme, God help me, I can't believe I'm saying this, this is the first balanced 2-drop scaler of all time. It is asking enough of you in everything except Thanos, where, like, I actually do think that there is a possibility this card might be too strong. Not right now, but, like, in the future, I can see this card potentially being too strong in Thanos. This is a card that is asking enough of you in deck building that it is, in my opinion, conclusively not broken. Very fine card to exist.
It's asking a lot of you. Also, there are times where it just eats a thing out of a location that you needed. Right? And I think obviously there's a lot of ways to play around that as best you can, but sometimes that does just happen. I think the card is very, very fair. It does have big numbers, like it does output big stats, but yeah, anytime a card is like play Squirrel Girl with me, and I swear to you, I will provide. It's just like I don't know. I'm a little skeptical. So I do like this guy, and I'm with you. I definitely have more fun playing the strange version of Thanos than the ongoing one. But it's also like week 3 of playing with the ongoing Thanos deck, basically. So there's some amount of that going on too. But yeah, card is super fun, and you noted that it's like not vulnerable to Killmonger, Enchantress, that sort of stuff. It is very vulnerable to like Shang-Chi, Shadow King, etc.
Yeah.
So it has its own vulnerabilities too. So overall, very balanced.
Yeah, it's actually shocking to me how balanced this card is compared to the number that it says on it. Like, I remember going on Twitter and seeing people say, like, my 2-drop is bigger than the Infinite. And it's like, is it? Is it actually bigger than the Infinite? Or did you eat a demon and that's where 6 of those pout points are coming from? One of the things...
Yeah. It's still 10. It's still 10 from your other location. Like, is it really? Like, I don't know.
One of the things that's been the most frustrating for me, like the actual thing that I like the least about Strange Supreme, is how liable he is to eat my Iron Patriot card. And it's like, I need those points where I need those points. I don't need them on the Strange Supreme lane. Like, this is such a great card for the flavor, because a lot of how playing him feels is you're like, all right, he ate some guys, he's doing his job, and then he just keeps eating, and you're like, no, stop.
Yeah, dude, we're good. No, it's got Agatha vibes,
Yeah. Like, it's like that a little bit.
I put you in my deck. We're supposed to be homies. Help me out.
And then he's eating the Space Stone right as you need to play Thanos into a kiln. And you're just like, oh, great. Thanks, man. I guess I just lost. You did that.
Dude, there were 4 other stones over there. What are you doing? Why that one?
This actually literally happened to me. I remember this game specifically is I saved Space Stone until 5 because I knew I would need to Thanos into a kiln. There were like 3 or 4 other stones on the board. He immediately ate Space Stone. I was like, I played around it as best I could, and he was still just like, no way, man. You're dead. Sorry.
Nah. He knew. I mean, canonically evil, so there you go.
Yep. One of the things that I like to harp on, and I know my viewers probably know this because I like to harp on it, is that card games need an element of RNG in them. It is incredibly important that worse players can beat better players not just a non-zero amount of the time, but like a notably large amount of the time. Like, it needs to be a decent amount of the time in order for them to feel like it is worth playing the game. An example I think a lot of old school card gamers point to is Versus System, which another Marvel game, actually, I believe. Might have been DC.
Yeah.
This is an old game, but the skill cap was such that the better player won a drastically larger amount of the time than in other games. And I think one thing you see a lot is like a player who's pretty good. I guess you'd describe them as like a Levine Trench player, complaining about RNG and saying like it sucks that RNG is in this game because they're like, 85th percentile in the world. They're better than most everyone they know. And most of the games they lose are because they get unlucky. And it's like, you can say that, or you can like, be like, I'm going to get to 95th percentile and be like, this is how I get there. But it is true that when you're like an 85th percentile player, a decent portion of the games you lose are just, you got varianced out, and that's an important part of the game. And so I think a lot of those 85th percentile players are going to talk about that as the proximate cause. So I guess I just want your perspective as a card game veteran on why this is actually important. Because I've talked a lot about it being important, but why is it so important that you have variance in these games?
One of my favorite Marvel Snap cards is Cersei.
Sure.
And I think Hearthstone did a pretty good job of training me to embrace the RNG aspect because it was so in your face. And Marvel Snap is less so, but through playing Hearthstone for various years, I no longer play, but there was like a solid 4 or 5 year stretch where I was playing every day and was also about 1,000 deep in that game. So, I like it. I think that people in general need to embrace the RNG aspect. In fact, the very last match I played on the Pro Tour, was, I think, in 2019. It was round 1 in a match of Limited in Draft. And the game literally came down to my opponent flipping the top card of their deck. And it was like, if it's mana cost 4 or higher, they win the game. Any other card, they lose. And my opponent is just like, he's a Pro Tour regular, and he's just mindlessly, it's business, just business. He's going through the motions, and he's just like, no excitement, no emotion, just like going to flip this card where it's like 20% chance you win. And I stop him. I'm like, whoa, stop. Before you do this, is Magic fun? And he looked at me and was just like confused. Like, I don't think about this stuff. Why does this matter? And then he realized the situation he was in, where he's literally just like flipping a weighted coin to see whether or not he wins the match. And then he's like, yeah, it is fun. And then he flipped a 4 and I died. And I dropped, and then that was it. So I love that stuff. It's a good story. It adds replayability to all of these games, because if it is just, chess and memorizing openings and stuff like that, it's like, it gets monotonous. It gets boring. Like, you need to just get this stuff injected into your game. And I don't know, there are things like Lamentus or whatever, where it's like, okay, maybe that's a little bit too much, maybe we don't need that, or at the very least, not showing up all the time. And I think that Snap has done a good job of curating the locations and the percentage they show up and everything. I actively love this stuff, and I want people to appreciate it more, because it genuinely makes the game more fun. And I want you to realize that, even if it comes at the cost of 8 cubes, like, you wouldn't come back every day if the experience wasn't different, right? And this is part of it. And you can nitpick and critique how severe it should be, maybe. And I am sympathetic to that. And like I said, Hearthstone went way too far. Stuff like Knife Juggler, just straight up determining outcomes of games or whatever, is silly. It is silly. But you can do it
the example you use, because they went so much farther than that. So fast.
No, I know. But like, that's like the OG, like, this card is stupid, and it just kind of like illustrates exactly what Hearthstone was doing, right? But I think that Marvel Snap is very fun, because they take a very tempered approach to it, but are very cognizant of the fact that, like, our game needs this.
And I also like that in Marvel Snap, they put it on something that is not the player's responsibility. Like, instead of it being on your cards, which is where it's located in Hearthstone, or where it's located in Runeterra, for example, with random generation. That's Runeterra is a great example of a card game that was like, let's take out all the RNG of our game mechanics, and then we realize we need more RNG, so we put it all on the cards.
Yeah.
We realized the game got formulaic, so it's like, let's make a bunch of cards that make other cards.
And you're also kind of like making up for lost time there too. So then it's like overly juiced, and then you have to rein it back in, and yeah, not great.
A concept I've been sort of ruminating on recently is the idea of board slots as card advantage in Marvel Snap. And this is a concept that sort of developed out of me talking to you about it. I did a video recently talking about Infinity Ultron's buff and why this was an important thing, and sort of the terminology I use for it is like investment and the allowance for further investment. Why Infinity Ultron going to 8 compared to 6 matters is because 8 is bigger than 6. And I know that sounds stupid, but it's because 8 is also going to be bigger than more of your opponent's cards. And because when you use one board slot on 8 power, you have 3 others to invest in there as needed, in order to make sure that your 8 power investment is not beaten by something your opponent plays.
Yeah, it's weird, because it took me a long time to sort of come to this conclusion. And part of it is that there's like this red herring of, well, if my hand is bigger, right? Like, say I do draw 3 cards at the start of a game of Marvel Snap, I have more options. I have more resources. Yeah. You can clearly see how that would be beneficial and to your advantage, and you would be able to better utilize your energy every single turn, and maximize what you are getting from each energy spent as well, where it's like, I am going to play this 3/6 instead of this 3/4 because I just happen to have both of them because I have so many resources, right? So it was like, well, having more resources is definitely a good thing. And also lower collection level, Sentinel was cracked. It was very, very good. And there were a lot of reasons for that, like 3-cost Devil Dinosaur and whatnot. But it was just like, oh yeah, card advantage is still a thing that matters, blah, blah, blah. But once you get collection complete or close to it, and you start playing these games more and more, it's just like, how many games do you play where you just have like 5 cards in your hand at the end of the game? And it's like not why you lost, your lack of resources, it is very much something else. And the thing that matters more so than that is, the power that you are committing to each location and what you are able to commit to each location as well. So things like Mr. Sinister and Mysterio and Brood, yes, there are cheaty ways to, Gwenpool these things and make them unfair or whatever. But like in theory, they are overstated, right? They should be better than a comparable card of that cost, and yet they are not. And why is that? Why is that, do you think? And people play with a thing like Brood because they look at it and it's like, oh, this is so sick. And then it's like, oh, I keep losing. I'm going to cut this Brood. It's always bad when I play it. And you don't really think about the how or why that you get to that point. And maybe card advantage is not the exact corollary thing or whatever, but it is very much like, what am I able to put in this location? And the next step to that is like, once you have like 2 stones and a Mockingbird, what is the max you can commit there? Like, okay, so the ceiling's 22 power Thanos, right? But most of the time it's going to be 12. And if you have priority, your opponent has a Shang-Chi or whatever, like, it's not like you can just play 3 small things there to get play around their Shang-Chi, right? Like, you no longer have that option. So card advantage is basically about having more options effectively, and the board slot stuff is restricting your options. And it's very similar. It just plays out so similarly every time. Not to say that like Thanos stones are bad, because clearly they are not. It is just, you need to make good use out of your remaining 2 or 3 slots in each location, which you do with things like Thanos, Mockingbird, Spectrum, etc.
I think that's a big part of why I like Thanos so much, is because a lot of other decks in Marvel Snap are designed with this principle in mind, or at least intuitively understood by the people that have already made them, which is why you see like when I talk about good cards decks, part of what makes them good is that they're good stats per slot. It's not just like, because, Mr. Sinister, that's a 2/4. It's bigger than a lot of 2/3s, but it's 2 slots, and that's a higher cost than people are, like, everyone intuitively understands that that's a too high cost, but I'm not sure they understand exactly why, and this is why. And so when you see decks built in Marvel Snap, they're often built with an understanding of this, even if it's not explicit, if it's not explicitly stated. There's a reason why people aren't curving out Broods in decks that aren't trying to abuse them. And this is that reason. And Thanos specifically is a deck that is pushing on your board space as a resource. This is a card that, if board space was not a constraint, would be drastically better than it is. And I think a lot of people run into problems. Yes! A lot of people run into problems playing Thanos where they're like, oh, why am I losing these games? And a lot of the reason is you weren't judicious with your board spot use, and your opponent knew that they didn't have to worry about this lane getting all that much bigger because you're kind of capped in terms of how much power you can put into it.
Yeah, part of that too is you did not leave yourself more options on the final turn. So like if you do have a location with 3 cards in it, your opponent knows what you can put in that location. Like they know what you are capped on because you yourself took away all of your options.
Next 2 topics are related: micro mental and macro mental. For micro mental, I just wanted you to share any tips you have for how to approach game to game mindset. For macro mental, any tips you have from being a professional card gamer, approaching your investment in a game like this, and maybe caring too much about rank or things of that nature. So on the micro scale, where do you want to start?
I've played matches of Magic for tens of thousands of dollars. And when I was finally at a spot to where I was good enough to be playing those matches for that high of stakes, it did not bother me. And I think that if it did bother me, I probably would not have been able to get to that position in the first place. So I want people to keep that in mind, because if you suffer from like ladder anxiety, or maybe you don't have like generalized anxiety about it, but like if you fall from like rank 50 to rank 200 and that is very frustrating, that is a thing that you are going to have to overcome if you want to continue playing at these ranks and being successful, because whether or not you can consciously realize it or not, it does have an effect on you and on the decisions that you make and things like that. So the best way to get through that, in my opinion, I think, is immersion therapy, is just like trying to play as many of those matches as you can and to be unbothered by it and to actively try to look on the bright side of things, where it's like, I am going to play this game because I have fun. I am going to try and rank up, but if I fail to rank up, that is a possible outcome. And we are playing a game with RNG. Even if you are the strongest player in the universe, like KMBest here, your win rate is certainly not going to be in like the 80% rank, you know? Like it's just not. It's more likely going to be in like the 60s. So that's a pretty sizable portion of the time where you have to be okay with losing. It is a possible outcome, right? And you need to be able to like frame that and be accepting of that. And at that point, it's just going to wash over you. It's like, yeah, I played, I lost, kind of lost this RNG thing, but probably could have made a few decisions better too. You know, let's be honest. It's never just the RNG stuff. Maybe you could have played around the RNG too. So immerse yourself, get used to it, and try not to beat yourself up too badly over it. And hopefully you can just like be playing. And if you're ranking up, feels good. If you're ranking down, feels neutral. That is the best place to be. Game is always fun at that point.
That is the exact, because like I think when you're putting a lot high premium on rank, you feel like losing is bad, but winning is something you're entitled to. You end up in the exact opposite mindset of what you're talking about. For me, the frustrating stuff very often is like when I need a deck to be good in order to make a video on it. Those are the days where it's like my losing is really bad, because it's also like, oh God, I don't have a video for tomorrow if I don't find a deck that's actually worth making a video on today. And that is like an artificial constraint that I've put on myself that is unfortunate, I think.
Yes.
Like it's one of those things where you're just like, and abandoning that mentality would actually make it more likely that I do find those decks and make those videos.
Yeah, you need to find a way to be able to make a compelling piece of content that you're happy with that isn't just like, oh, I have found a deck that is very good or whatever. It's like your deck can be, or your video can be informative and have value, even if it's like, hey, this is kind of mid, but it is very fun. These are the interactions I like. Maybe there is something we can do in this space. Maybe it just needs like another card or whatever. I think all of that is very helpful to people. And I think that you're kind of like selling yourself short on how much like people are going to enjoy that. Like it not every piece of content has to be the same thing. Like, oh, this is the banger of the day or whatever.
Zooming from that to macro mental, what is it that you've learned over a career and how to approach not necessarily card games as a career, because I don't think that's something that my audience is doing, but how to approach as a process the improvement of yourself at a game or really anything else of this nature?
Like I said, man, I like learning. If there is something I don't know, you know, someone asks a question or it's like, oh, what year did the show come out? Like, I'm looking it up. I'm looking it up every time. I want to know. I just genuinely do. Because like not knowing is weird. And especially now in this age, we have literally everything at our fingertips. We can just type it into a search bar and find the answer. In most cases. What should I be playing on ladder and Marvel Snap? That one's a little tougher. But I just want to know things. So if there's something in Magic, for example, where it's like, I don't know how to approach this matchup. I don't know how I'm supposed to be sideboarding, that sort of thing. Like I try to play games and figuring out because it's genuinely interesting to me. I like learning. I like knowing the answer, even if I don't necessarily put it into practice, because it might be something that I learned from that experience that I can translate in somewhere in the future, right? And that leads to me engaging with games like Marvel Snap, where I am playing a lot of BS because I'm trying to learn stuff. It's not just like I am going to mindlessly jam ongoing Thanos and slowly climb the ranks, because what am I getting out of that? There is diminishing returns on how much I can learn.
Gerry, you're getting ranks.
Can I sell 8 cubes for $50? Is that still the going rate?
I don't know. I mean, it was the going rate a few months ago. I don't know how tariffs have impacted the 8 cubes for $50 market, right? Because that was the European rate. I don't really know. I don't know the angle. I don't know. Maybe they've gotten more expensive. Maybe we've brought our manufacturing back on shore, and domestic American cubes are actually more valuable. That sounds realistic.
Hell yeah, brother. Hell yeah. Anyway, Magic, Snap, any sort of game any game you play, life, it is all about the big picture to me. Do not focus on your individual rank in any given moment, any given month. I think that if you focus on improvement, try to enjoy that, try to really enjoy that process, eventually good things will happen. If all you are doing is trying to learn, improve, get better over time, your rank will reflect that. That's just true.
One of the other things that I think our audience should know about is you are currently my co-host on the KMBest Podcast, which is a podcast that I've been doing. It's 21 weeks now. And I don't think I've promoted nearly enough. It is a lot. I don't think I've promoted it nearly enough on this channel. So this episode is like my clever attempt at cross promotion, right? If you liked what you saw here, you could check out that KMBest Podcast. But honestly, if you liked what you saw here and you want to hear more from Gerry, he's got a bunch of other podcasts. Gerry's the reason I didn't even want to talk about this, but like Gerry's the reason KMBest exist. And I don't mean that in the sense of like Gerry is my father. He could be.
Yeah, I don't know. Dad.
Yeah, but
I'm old enough to be your dad.
I don't think that's true. But this is the kind of thing where it's like, I wouldn't be the person that I am if I had not come up in Gerry's community when I was playing Magic. That wouldn't have happened. If Gerry's podcast partner at the time, Brian Gottlieb, hadn't helped me out, if Gerry himself hadn't helped me out, if people that had been helped by Gerry, like Yeoman5, hadn't directed me in that direction, I would not be playing Marvel Snap. I would not be as good at card games. I would be a completely different person. And so, in the sense that, like, I try to put other good players on in a lot of that, that's like a learned behavior from what Gerry did for me, right? Like, that's a thing that I picked up there. So, in the sense that I have various Marvel Snap sons, I am his son in that sense.
I know of people like Lambie and Husky Puppies and stuff just from you, straight up. So you are doing an excellent job of that. And yeah, you then, doing a podcast with Lambie every week, like it rules. I love to see that. I love to see other folks get elevated. Like Yeoman5, you called out. He's, I guess I don't know if he's still doing it, but was writing for TCG Player like very consistently. And
yeah,
dude, I love it, man. I think it's so good. Like, we exist in this space. If you get to a point where like you are a creator, you have a pretty sizable community or whatever, there are also going to be very talented people in that community, just inevitably. And I don't know, like it took me 20 years to get to the point where I have a platform this big or whatever. And certainly there was a lot of help along the way, right? But like, I don't necessarily want people to spend 20 years getting to the point where they have a platform when I already see the greatness that they are capable of. I feel like just having this person be able to like showcase their mind would benefit the community, and it would be good content for people. Like, I just want more of that to exist in the world.
And that's the message we want to leave you with. So, I mean, obviously, check out the KMBest Podcast if you want to hear more of me and Gerry. Genuinely, though, disclaimer, little less Marvel Snap focused. Not that we don't talk about Marvel Snap, but both of us have like very clear ADHD, and the podcast is like a sort of indulgence ground for that. So it does
It's-
come up.
It's way more unhinged.
Yes, that's probably the right way to say it. We will see you over there. And for Gerry Thompson, I've been KMBest. This has been 8 Cubes, and I hope y'all enjoyed.